here so that you're not in the way of my notes, and then we should be fine. So hello everybody, and welcome to my climate reality presentation. So as Dorothy's already told you, I was fortunate to join the Climate Reality Leaders Programme and to receive personal training from Al Gore to present his slide deck that he first shared in the movie An Inconvenient Truth. So I'm now part of a community of over 3,000 climate reality leaders worldwide who are authorised to use this material. So in my day job, I'm a sustainability consultant. I work for a company called Aclaro based in Wokingham. And I also volunteer as chair of the Reading Climate Change Partnership. And that's how we came to be working with the first ever climate festival for Reading. So we are holding an online festival comprising almost 50 free events to inspire positive action on climate change. I'm going to tell you more about that at the end of this presentation, but first of all, let's explore the climate crisis and its solutions. So this picture was taken in 1972, and it was the very first time in history that we could see our planet as a whole. So what's so unique about this photo is that every single living thing on Earth is in the picture. And when you look at Earth from space, you can't see any borders. All you see is one integrated system. And the whole of life on Earth depends on that. But as we know, this planet we live on is now in a state of crisis, and we have a climate and ecological emergency that threatens us all. So today I would like to pose three questions. The first question is, must we change? The second, can we change? And finally, most important, will we change? So question one, must we change? At the start, we're going to look at some of the science. So if you look up into the sky, it looks like it stretches on forever. But looking at this picture of the atmosphere, you can see what a very, very thin blue line it is that kind of protects us from outer space, which is a fairly hostile environment. If you could drive your car straight up into the air, you'd reach the lower limits of that outer space in about 10 minutes. That's how small the atmosphere is. And our lives depend on it, but we're spewing man-made global warming pollution into it on a daily basis. So that atmosphere protects the Earth, and it's very important for the climate. Light from the sun penetrates it, and here it hits the surface, and most of the energy is absorbed, and that's what warms the planet to a comfortable temperature for life. But some of that energy is radiated back into space as heat and infrared waves. That's hard to say. And some of this outgoing infrared is trapped by the atmosphere, which actually is a good thing because it keeps the Earth a comfortable place for all of the living creatures. And that's what's allowed millions of species to thrive on Earth up till now. It's like a blanket around the planet, but the problem is that blanket's getting thicker and thicker. So more of the heat is trapped on the planet and can't get out anymore, and that's why we get global warming. And the reason that atmospheric layer is getting thicker is because we're spewing 150 million tonnes of man-made global warming pollution into it every single day. So we're basically treating our atmosphere like an open sewer. And this pollution comes from many different sources, and I'm sure you know about a few of these already. But if you think about cars and trucks, air travel, energy production, the burning of forests, we see a lot of those things on the news, but it also comes from landfills and animal agriculture. And now the permafrost is also thawing, and that's releasing global warming gases into the atmosphere too. But the biggest source by far is our dependence on fossil fuels. And as you can see from this graph, it started climbing after World War II. And today, 80% of the world's energy still comes from fossil fuels. And the CO2 that's emitted when we burn them traps more and more of the sun's heat, and that's what raises the temperature of planet Earth. And as a result, temperatures are going up very fast. It's unmistakably clear, and the scientists are now telling us that this year already has more than a 70% chance of being the hottest year ever measured. In fact, 19 of the 20 hottest years ever measured have been this century. And you're not mistaken if you remember those hot summers recently, as the 5 hottest years since records began have been the last 5. So we're seeing the heat go up all over the world. In June of this year, Miami had its hottest week ever recorded. And the UK just experienced its hottest September ever. I'm sure you will remember the heat waves experienced in Australia at the beginning of 2020, and we probably all remember the fires that those led to as well. So what's clear is that these records are happening all around the world. 2019 was Europe's hottest year on record, and several countries, including the UK, broke their all-time high temperature records. But based on the data we have so far, 2020 looks like it will exceed the record again. Even in Siberia, above the Arctic Circle, it went above 38 degrees Celsius in June 2020. That's the hottest temperature ever measured north of the Arctic Circle. And that's over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, the northernmost 100-degree temperature ever recorded. Now, it's important to realise that most of the extra heat that's being generated is trapped by the oceans. In fact, up to 93% of all this heat goes into the oceans, and that has a big effect on the water cycle. So we're seeing ocean temperatures go up, with a new record last year and probably a new record this year. And one of the consequences is that ocean-based storms are getting much stronger. It also magnifies the amount of water vapour coming off the oceans into the sky. So you probably all remember the hydrological cycle from school. So we can see that more water is evaporated as the oceans warm up, forming bigger, heavier clouds, and then that's released in the form of much larger rain events. And when that happens over land, this causes all kinds of problems, including mudslides and flooding. So less than 6 months ago, this devastating storm hit the Philippines and more than 500,000 people were affected. This storm is in the area between India and Bangladesh, and actually both countries were hit hard by this super cyclone that was called Amphan. And the population living in the Sundarbans River Delta was devastated. Hundreds and thousands of people lost everything. And by the way, the sea's advancing about 200 metres per year there as well. So already more than 1 million people have left because the sea is encroaching on the land that they used to farm. We'll come to sea level rise later. So these destabilising effects were already apparent in many regions of the world. So already the numbers for last year show that 3 times more people were displaced by climate-related extreme weather events than by conflict and violence. That was 24 million people last year, and that number's increasing. And of course, with COVID-19 raging around the world, these rescues are even more of a challenge than usual. So to come back to this increased rain, we can see that the number of record-breaking downpours is increasing, going up from a handful a year to over 150 recently. And now we can see them coming down in these so-called rain bombs, massive downpours that drop so much water that the land's incapable of absorbing it all. And all over the world, we're seeing rainfall that breaks records. Several times this summer, regions of the UK have experienced a month's worth of rainfall in a single day. And other parts of the world are suffering too. So this was Tennessee earlier this year, where heavy rain caused major flooding. And then closer to home, this was in February, where Storm Dennis caused major flooding and winds of up to 90 miles an hour across the UK. In Herefordshire, Shropshire and South Wales, more than a month's worth of rain fell in 48 hours, and more than 1,000 homes were flooded, with a record number of flood warnings being issued. It happened again in August due to Storm Dennis. And then in Dorset, just a couple of weeks ago, due to Storm Alex. Storm Alex caused even more devastation in mainland Europe, for example, in France, where more than 450 millimetres of rain fell over 24 hours. That's the equivalent of almost 4 months' worth of rain that would normally fall at this time of year. And floods don't just displace people and damage their homes, they also cause damage to infrastructure. Sadly, 3 people died when a landslip caused by torrential rain derailed the Aberdeen to Glasgow service near Stonehaven earlier this year. And we're not going to go through all of these, but you can see the potential for damage to infrastructure is vast, and the cost of all that damage soon begins to add up. So extreme rainfalls are pattern holding around the world, and this also affects agriculture. So 20 million acres of US farmland couldn't be farmed last year because of the massive downpours. And in a global food system, that has a ripple effect across a large number of countries, including ours. Floods in the USA in spring 2019 caused damage valued at $20 billion, a third of which was in the value of crops. And globally, these extreme rain events are happening 4 times more frequently than they were just 40 years ago. And they often have the most devastating effects in the global south, disproportionately impacting some of the world's poorest people. So this one was this summer in India and Nepal, where 4 million people were displaced by flooding and mudslides. And here in Kenya, a little earlier in the year, 100,000 families were displaced. And that same extra heat that evaporates the water from the ocean and causes these rain bombs also pulls the moisture out of the soil. So this makes droughts occur more quickly and last for longer. So as a result, the groundwater levels are much lower these days than they were in the past. So this is Europe only a few months ago, with dangerously low groundwater levels all around the continent. And in parts of Poland and Romania, the drought's the worst in a century. In the Czech Republic, it's the worst in 500 years. In Belgium, they saw the driest May since the 1800s. With already disruptions in the food supply chain, you can see that these are all being exacerbated by both COVID-19 and by climate change. So the IPCC has warned that we may soon reach a threshold beyond which the current agricultural practices will no longer be able to support large human populations. And we've seen that water scarcity is already a problem for more than 40% of the world's population. Those of us who are privileged to live in areas where this hasn't been a problem are sometimes surprised to realise how serious a crisis this is in many parts of the world. And of course, lack of running water for washing hands puts people at increased risk of communicable diseases, which is obviously an incredibly serious issue during the current pandemic. So this is Chennai in India, the 6th largest city in the world. Last year, they almost completely ran out of water. But we shouldn't kid ourselves that this only affects poor people in faraway places. The whole of the southeast of England is classified at risk of water stress, and Thames Water's website warns that this could impact their customers as early as this year. And when we have high temperatures and drought, as we saw the devastating effect in Australia, we also see more fires. And this year, there's been an incredible increase in wildfires around the world. So this one is this summer in Arizona. And in California last October, they had devastating fires that grew and spread with frightening speed too. And this year it's happening again. And we had hundreds of wildfires burning for more than a month in California and Oregon at the end of the summer. Data from CAMS shows that these fires are significantly more intense than the average for the previous period from 2003 to 2019, and they're the worst in 18 years. NASA's described this as a perfect storm of meteorological factors, contributing to the period of extreme burning. So with record-breaking temperatures, unusually dry air and fierce winds on top of drought, you've got the perfect recipe for fire. Some have estimated that the economic impact of this year's fires could be more than $20 billion. And of course, the same thing was true in Australia at the turn of the year. The smoke from those fires circled the globe, and the cost to biodiversity is only now being realised. Along with the governor of California, the Prime Minister of Greece pointed to climate change as the cause of all this devastation. And unfortunately, there are also the fires made by man to clear land for agriculture, like these in the Amazon, destroying habitats, displacing people, and incinerating forests that play a vital role in absorbing the carbon dioxide that we're constantly emitting. So as you can see, the number of extreme weather events is growing. And of course, there's both a human and a financial cost to every one of these. The reinsurance companies tell us that this is completely unsustainable. And all this heat is also melting the ice-covered regions of the world. So look, for example, at the ice in Greenland, where this glacier just turned into water. So NASA's estimate of the ice loss in Greenland shows us that it's happening 4 times faster than they'd originally thought. And the same thing's true in Antarctica, where ice melting has accelerated quite dramatically. So a report published by academics from the University of Leeds in August concluded that the melting of the ice sheets in Greenland and Antarctica are matching the worst case scenario climate warming predicted by the IPCC. So if these rates continue, the ice sheets are expected to raise sea levels by a further 17 centimetres and expose an additional 16 million people to annual coastal flooding by the end of the century. So if we look at the top 10 cities by population affected by sea level, you'll see a lot of them are in India and Southeast Asia and home to some of the poorest people in the world. But if you look at the same risk expressed in terms of assets, you'll see some of the world's major financial centres in the top 10, places like New York, for example. And in fact, New York and Newark has $130 billion of real estate assets at risk from rising sea levels. Bringing that closer to home, here's the projection for the Thames over that same period. So you can see that significant portions of London are potentially at risk of being impacted by sea level rise. But the people most at risk are in low-lying Pacific Island nations, and in some places they're already having to leave their country because it's just not possible to live there anymore due to rising seawater. And the UK's national security strategy explicitly recognises climate change as a national security issue. The 2015 Strategic Defence and Security Review cited climate change and resource scarcity as continuing risks, and other security agencies around the world have also identified this as a major security issue. In fact, before the civil war in Syria ever started, we saw this climate-related drought destroy 60% of the farmland in Syria, turning it into desert land. They lost 80% of their livestock, and as a result, we saw 1.5 million people driven from the farming areas of Syria into the cities, colliding with others who were already there as refugees from the Iraq War. And after the climate-related drought from 2006 to 2010, 1 million refugees came across the Mediterranean and destabilised political harmony in Europe. So it's also a health crisis, a medical emergency caused by the climate crisis all over the world. In fact, tropical diseases have been spreading to higher latitudes. Air travel is one of the reasons why, but the new climate conditions have expanded the regions where these diseases take root and become endemic. And as we see more destruction of previously wild lands, we're also seeing more diseases appear because there are countless viruses in the areas where humans have not previously strayed. And on average, we get 5 new diseases every year, including the current COVID-19 pandemic. Then there's air pollution, which kills 9 million people a year, including 40,000 in the United Kingdom. So that's almost as many people as have died from COVID-19 this year are killed every year in the UK by poor air quality. That same burning of fossil fuels that creates the global warming pollution also creates particulates that are linked to cancer, asthma, stroke, heart disease, and have associations with diabetes and obesity. And once again, it's the poorest members of society who are often affected the most by air pollution. For example, London schools that have more pupils from deprived neighbourhoods tend to be in the areas most affected by air pollution. It also makes people more vulnerable to the COVID-19 pandemic, with death rates elevated in places with poorer air quality. And humans are not the only ones we're putting at risk. As we speak, we're also seeing the 6th great extinction. We could lose over 40% of all living species, 50% of all living species within this century alone. If any of you have seen David Attenborough's recent documentary, A Life on This Planet, he really makes the case for this very strongly. So when you add up all of those costs, and we haven't even talked about ocean acidification or plastic pollution, we can add one more cost to the climate crisis. It's actually the #1 threat to the global economy. The World Economic Forum has made that declaration for the last 4 consecutive years. So, do we have to change? Yes, we do. So what about the second question? Can we change? Well, this is where the good news comes in. I'm sure you're ready for some now. We do have the solutions at hand. Just look at the best predictions for wind energy 20 years ago. They said that the world would reach 30 gigawatts of energy by 2010. We beat those numbers by a long way, and this year we are 22 times over what was predicted. We're seeing a dramatic expansion of wind energy all over the world. And the story is even more dramatic when it comes to solar energy. The best estimates 18 years ago were that we would reach 1 gigawatt per year of solar energy by 2010. But when 2010 rolled round, we beat that projection by 17 times over. And last year, we exceeded it 121 times. This exponential curve is even steeper than the one for wind and rising even faster. It's also causing an energy revolution because the cost of renewable energy continues to come down dramatically. Some countries are really running ahead. Look at Chile, for example. Look at all the solar farms that they've built and are approved for construction to begin. This is a breakout scenario that's being repeated in a number of regions around the world as solar energy becomes so much cheaper than any other source of energy. And it's a cause for tremendous hope. We're seeing a really rapid transition. And we're not going to run out of solar energy because the energy we receive from the sun every single hour is enough to supply all the electricity the world needs for an entire year. And we're continuing to build storage capacity for renewable energy so we can use the energy even when the sun doesn't shine or the wind doesn't blow. When we rescale this graph, we can see the projects that are about to come, a new trillion-dollar industry in the coming decade. And electric cars are now beginning to push the internal combustion engine out of the market. We're seeing a massive shift to electric vehicles, with all these manufacturers now providing EVs, and many of them are also now developing hydrogen technology as well. If you look at the electric vehicles on the road, and this will just keep going up, this will cut global warming pollution really quickly. Another positive sign. So can we change? Yes, we can change. Absolutely, we can. So the final question, and the most important one, will we change? So in 2015, the Paris Agreement was a real breakthrough. It wasn't enough, but this year in 2020 is the upcoming review period, and every nation around the world has made a formal commitment to get to zero greenhouse gas emission by mid-century. Now, interestingly, the US had declared its intention to withdraw from the Paris Agreement, and it wasn't able to legally do that until the day after the 2020 presidential election. But unfortunately, due to the delay in counting the votes and declaring the president, the new president-elect, America is, as we sit here today, out of the Paris Agreement. But President-elect Biden has declared that he will be rejoining the Paris Agreement. So that's really, really good news for the world. And more recently, even China's made a commitment to net zero, which is a major breakthrough. The market's also changing to help us transition. Here we can see how the fossil fuel sector in red is declining relative to the rest of the stock market as people withdraw their investments from carbon-intensive industries and invest in sustainable technologies. And we're seeing businesses show real leadership. More than 240 global companies have pledged to go 100% renewable, and more companies are adding their names and pledges to this list every day. And just this week, we saw the 1,000th company commit to setting science-based decarbonisation targets aligned to the Paris Agreement. And the rising young generation, the Greta generation, they're leading the way. They're demanding a better world, as they have every right to do. So join those who are using their voices, using their votes, and using their choices to fight for their future, their community, and their world. Use your voice, use your vote, use your choices in the marketplace and elsewhere, like your world depends on it. Speak truth to power, because actually, your world does depend on it. Now that's the end of Al Gore's material, but I'm just going to bring the focus right in now to Reading and talk to you about what we're doing locally to combat climate change. And there's some really exciting stuff going on this week. So as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm co-chair of the Reading Climate Change Partnership. And tomorrow we're launching Reading's Climate Emergency Strategy and Action Plan, which takes us from 2020 to 2025, which is halfway to our target of net zero carbon by 2030. So who are we? So we were formed in 2007 and we've been running climate change strategy and action plans for Reading since that time. We were originally part of the local strategic partnership. Those were disbanded a couple of years ago. So we're in the process of reconstituting as an independent entity. And we're a multi-stakeholder group of volunteers supported by just one member of staff. We have a part-time coordinator and she's funded by Sunshine. So we had a small grant a few years back that we invested in solar panels. So the solar PV feed-in tariff actually funds our secretariat. Reading Borough Council is one member of the partnership, but we are independent of the council. And I'm happy to say that we do have influence as well over their policies. So we are very much a group that's organising response on climate change by the people of Reading, for the people of Reading. And our vision is a climate resilient net zero town by 2030. Now that's going to involve everybody who lives, works or studies in Reading. So we've got a lot of people to convince. So we are trying to form a coalition of the willing under the banner of the Reading Climate Action Network. So that's communities and organisations coming together in Reading to tackle climate change. And our home is on this website, www.readingcan.org.uk. So we started the process of creating a climate emergency strategy and action plan for Reading just after the climate emergency was declared about this time last year. And we worked on that with a team of 6 team leads. So you can see the themes here that we've divided the plan into. We have water supply and flooding, transport and mobility, health and wellbeing, natural environment and open spaces, energy and low carbon development, resources and consumption. So each of those themes had a theme lead and a task force of subject matter experts who were working with them to develop the strategy and action plan. And then we have these 4 cross-cutting themes of education, community, business and adaptation. We had a specialist agency prepare our adaptation report because we didn't have any expertise available to us on that. And then we've all been working to embed business, community and education across the 6 themes. And then kind of leading the spearhead of that, we have a communications and engagement team whose responsibility is to make sure that as many people as possible in Reading know about our plan and hopefully join us in helping to deliver it. So we have a lot of activities running this week, all around inspiring and equipping people to act on climate change in Reading. I'm just going to run you through a couple of those. So the first thing is we've just launched a brand new website. So this was launched on Friday and it's very much action focused. So you can see here at the top, it says, what can I do? And obviously this is just a picture, but if you visit the website and click on that, you can see loads and loads of hints and tips about easy behaviour change that you can make today that will cost you nothing and might save you money. And we also have sections of the website for businesses to help them reduce their carbon emissions. And also we have lots of resources for schools to help the teachers develop lesson plans that support climate change, but also look at the impact of the school, the fabric of the building itself. So as you're already aware, this event has come under the umbrella of the Reading Climate Festival. So we have a whole week of free events, 49 events taking place. The majority are online. We have a couple of guided tree walks and a couple of other things that you can do independently in the open air. But those are all free to sign up to. They're available to anybody. You can get to them from this website here, and they cover everything from climate scientists at the University of Reading explaining the science to practical workshops about what you can do at home. And then there are a couple about how you can access grant funding to improve the energy efficiency of either your home or your business as well. So it really is something for everyone, even the children. We have some family workshops too. And then we have an ongoing programme of engagement through social media, helping to drive people to the website and to the festival, But also moving forwards, we have a programme of social media activities that will just keep reminding people about what are the things that they can do personally and in their organisations to combat climate change. And as new reports and stories come out, we will continue to share those with our community. So what can you do? So, well, you can join the festival. I mean, you have already because you're here tonight, but there are so many other events that you could join. And there's the link there that you can find the full programme listed. You can visit the website. You can sign up on the website to be kept informed. We won't spam you, but we will let you know 2 or 3 times a year when something important happens or there's an event that looks like it might be interesting for people like you. And also on the website, you can take a pledge to make 5 simple changes to your own lifestyle that will have an immediate and direct impact on climate change. If you're users of social media, you can like, share and comment on our social media posts. And also, if you go to our website, you can read the action plan and you can see whether there are any actions there that perhaps your organisation could help to deliver by becoming a delivery partner. So our key message is that really everybody in the town can do something. It's absolutely possible to make a difference. And the more of us that do, the greater the change will be from all of us combined. I've now managed to hide my buttons by moving. Oh, this is really embarrassing. So I just need to try and hide you guys so that I can press my button. There we go. So I can get to the final slide. So my last message really is to say, please help Reading reach net zero by 2030. Join us now to take action. There's the URL for our website. You can see our social media accounts along the bottom. We would very much like to have you work with us on reducing Reading's carbon emissions and making it a more comfortable place to live for everybody despite climate change. Thank you very much.